Hiya, thank you. So, we'll get started. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday evening. This is Ecological. This is our second event, actually. We're going to need a bigger venue for the next one because this is looking awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's topic is everyday activism. Now, sustainability is pretty much at the forefront of most people's conversation, and it kind of filters in even to the biggest topics. For example, if anyone's heard about coronavirus, maybe you've missed it, maybe you haven't. It's been observed that 25% of the output of the carbon output of China has actually dropped in the last 2 weeks as a consequence of the slowdown from both the drop in demand and also the drop in supply. We're also, of course, seeing last week in Bristol, Greta Thunberg visiting on College Green and giving her speech. Interestingly as well, the right has sponsored a think tank and a 19-year-old German girl called Naomi Sebit. They have got no original ideas, but they think that they can just fund another teenage girl to try and sway other people to say that climate alarmism is just a load of hokey. In slightly smaller impacts as well, people are doing good things all around the globe. Saw on MNSBC this week, they did an expo on a Japanese town. Only a small population of 1,500 people, but they've actually created a system where they're able to recycle and reuse 80% of the materials that the town goes through, and that is by all of the village coming together with their waste into one place, and then they separate it into 45 different categories. Only something that we can dream of, because I still get confused between glass and paper. It is still real difficult. The purpose of tonight's event is actually to celebrate some of the people that are taking proactive action. I know that all of you in this room will probably still be doing your bit, whether that's cycling to work or just making sure that you recycle properly, or at least better. But we're going to hear from people who are starting to make waves, either on a slightly smaller level or maybe even on a national level. But I think everything starts from home and expands out from here. We're going to start tonight with two sisters who took a sibling rivalry and turned it into a mission for sustainability. They are the Sisters Against Plastic. I'd love to welcome our first guests for tonight, Mary Strong and Teresa Walters. Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely meeting you.
Hi,
thank you so much. Mary, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay then, I had to ask Teresa, Mary.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, good.
In our homes. And at the end of that month, we would weigh that plastic, and then we would try and reduce that weight down each month. You thought you were going to be quite good at it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say that probably a lot of us think, you know what, I don't have that much plastic, I recycle really well, probably I'm not going to have that much. You know, when it boils down to it, there'll be a few bags, a few bottles, and it'll actually be really easy, there won't be that much. So in January, when we decided let's just live as normal, collect it all, and just see what it is we're actually dealing with, I was really quite gobsmacked with just how much I had. Like, there's a photo of Teresa in that first month, literally all over the kitchen floor. And, you know, it was nothing out of the ordinary. It was just really regular stuff that everybody uses. I had loads of plastic water bottles, there's milk bottles, there's crisp packets, you know, really regular stuff. But when you bring it all together and look at it all, you know, you're not sort of sticking it in a bin or forgetting about it, it really sort of brings it home and makes you think, oh, hang on a minute, I have actually got quite a lot. And I think it was over 3 kilos that I had, and Teresa had over 4 kilos.
It was massive.
And when you think about how
really
light
shocking.
plastic is, that's a
Well,
lot
it's
of
purpose,
plastic.
isn't it, of course?
Yeah.
Or I was saying both sisters, but also both mothers. So,
So we were doing this with small families. I mean, I've got 3 children. Mary, at the beginning of this year, had 2.
Yeah.
She had a baby mid-plastic diet year
Oh,
as
I thought
well,
you
which is quite a challenge.
I think you would say you got rid of one halfway through.
It's quite an extreme way of getting plastic use, but
Yeah.
probably help. But yeah. So we were doing it as families with children, you know, trying to just live normal lives.
Yeah.
Were they supportive of that? You were turning around to them and saying you're going to have to now cut down on the amount of plastic. I mean,
Yeah, it was interesting
Yeah.
pitching it, especially to our husbands.
yes.
I clearly remember when, you know, me and Mary were sat with a glass of wine one evening, and my husband comes home from work, and we told him this plastic diet that we were going to do. And he looked at me and he goes, Teresa, of all the crazy things I thought you would do, this wasn't even on my risk list. Never dared ask him what is on his risk list.
No, I want to see that.
I don't want to see it. And so, but this he did get on board. He was a bit slow on the uptake on a few things, but when he does find something plastic free, or he does find an alternative, or he does do something, he's so proud of himself. And the kids thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think they thought it was brilliant because of the competition element.
Yeah,
They really got on board for that.
That kind of, ignites their passion. They think, great, I win. We even made a trophy. So, when we were passing a trophy between us each month, it gave them a little incentive just to, I want that. And
Two households pitted against one.
Well, yeah,
Really
really Romeo and
was.
Juliet, doesn't it?
Oh, but we had a whole thing for like the final weigh-in in December.
Oh, fantastic. What did you do for that?
We had like a whole day of like, we had this build-up and, and then we all sat on the two sofas and did the whole like slow announcement of like who had won.
Dermot O'Leary turned up.
It was
obviously,
very
with the
much
member
like
as well,
that.
yeah, of
And
course,
the kids went wild, didn't they? They thought it was absolutely brilliant. And because we had done this diet for a year, and because we had each month picked on one focus, so we'd already realised that actually we can't do all of it all at once. That was just too overwhelming. It was one of those problems that if you look at everything, then you just back away. You just can't do everything.
Of course.
So we picked one element every month, and it was quite nice on our blog. We had these theme weeks, and everybody got really on board. So one month we considered cleaning products or laundry. One month we'd do picnics. One month we'd do holidays. Pets even came up, so we were doing all these things. And because we slowly kind of chipped away at our plastic use, I'm not sure whether I'm bitter or proud, but Mary was the ultimate winner. I am proud of her. I am very proud of her. And Mary, your percentage decrease was?
Overall, I think it was 91%.
There you go, 91%. And she had a baby mid that year as well. And a very respectable second place, I think. I reduced my plastic in 1 year by 73%.
Wow.
It was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal what you can do if you put your mind to it.
You went through some of the particular themes. Were there any that you found that were just obviously going to be trickier than others? I mean, there would be some easy wins, I assume, in the beginning. But
definitely.
where did you find that there was probably the hardest ground to gain when it came to reducing plastic?
I think the specific items that were difficult. So, like you said, there were really easy things. We've both got milkmen now. You take your reusable bags when you go get fruit and veg. You can buy bread in paper and all that kind of thing. But when you get down to things like, I found cereal packets was my nemesis. We get through a lot of cereal. Where do you get your cereal from? We didn't have a zero waste shop, so we couldn't even turn to that to get some of the stuff. And so you did have to start thinking a bit more creatively about what we were going to do, and actually that was one area where we really struck upon something that's continued since we've finished the year-long diet. We set up a buying group, so essentially like a zero waste shop but out of our garage, and it's like a community cooperative shop. So we buy in things in bulk, and we kind of ask people can become members, and they come along to us with their own containers and fill up. So the really difficult dried goods like rice and pasta and the cereals, we kind of gave ourselves access to this by setting up a whole sort of initiative that enabled other people as well.
I was going to say, because this is what the website that you guys have now created is kind of geared towards. This is sistersagainstplastic.co.uk.com. So for anyone that's going to be writing that down right now, we will send out some information to you. That's sistersagainstplastic.com. If you've given us your email address as well as getting a free drink, we will send out all like resources to you as well after the event, so you can access this stuff. So you've kind of created that. How long has that been going for?
Well, the buying group Mary set up during our year of the plastic diet.
So that was
October 2018, and it's really, really grown. The response to it has been so positive.
Yeah, so it started off, we just got a few people that we knew, and it is a local thing, so it's about building a community. And it started off pretty basic, all on paper, and it felt like going back to the 1950s. But as it kind of grew and we got more people interested, Teresa's husband is very tech savvy, and so he created this website for us, and so it's just kind of grown from strength to strength. But it's been about 18 months now that it's been going.
So you came to an end then at the end of 2018 going into 2019, and you've kind of created, there's the blog, which kind of acts as a legacy within itself. Daily Mail did a surprisingly good job actually on capturing that story.
we really sort of undenied, we're like, should we do this for the Daily Mail? Do we feel this is the right place to do it?
There's lots of different publications that have approached us, and every time we have to kind of think very carefully about it was, but we've done this for everybody.
We've done this
the better
it is.
So
do you think what you have done is replicable for other people? Because, that's
Yeah.
simple. Yeah. Yes,
simple
basically.
answer is yes.
We've
absolutely.
even had, I know of 3 people that have contacted us, and they are literally replicating the diet. They are saving all of their plastic and they're weighing it and reducing it. And they keep us updated on a monthly basis, and it's wonderful to see. And every single one of them start off with that month of let's just live as normal and see what our plastic is like. And they finish that month and go, good grief, how have we done that? And it's such an eye-opener doing this. We call it the plastic audit, is saving everything. But there's so many people that, like I say, with the blog, that follow us, and people that do, maybe take one element of it and do a little bit and do this, and everybody can do something. And it's really reassuring to know that everybody is trying to do something. But doing this plastic diet, completely replicable.
Well, that's something that you guys have quoted. I will quote you back now. Is where you're talking about recycling as being as an alternative, or as an answer to a problem, but it's not really. You refer to it as it's that last bastion. It's the last resort, isn't it? Reduction is really what you guys are trying to promote. You've now been obviously taken up by people like the Environment Agency to consult on how they're getting more people involved in that. Now that also clashed with our first ecological event. So that was 6 weeks ago when we came up with the idea of the event. Chris, who's Chief Bear in the corner over there for Northern Bear Agency, he said, it's great, I know people who are really into sustainability, like these girls, Sisters Against Plastic, have gone out there, they've done it, they've proven it that it can be done. We should get them along to the event. I'm going to call them. Oh no, damn, they're busy. And that's generally how we wanted to get you guys along for that. But I mean, you're here now. I can forgive you for it. But you were, of course, doing, I think, arguably something a little bit more important. What were you asked to do with the Environment Agency?
We just so they wanted us to just come and talk to them. Same here. Just give. It was members of staff. It was leaders within the Environment Agency in the West Midlands area, getting together. Talking about what they could do within their workplace, but also kind of a bit of I suppose, realism in a way. You're a little bit removed, particularly when you work, I think, in a government agency, and when you're looking at it from a global perspective, really bring it back and say, what actually can individuals do? We are just ordinary people. How can we make it accessible, and how can we make people think, that's what I can do, and take away some real specific actions that they can then take either into the workplace, into their real lives, and just to give people, I guess, a bit of, hopefully, inspiration that everyone can do something.
What do you think the key points were that they didn't know, that you were able to teach them?
Know. What do you think you taught them?
It was really about, there was a lot of talk of people saying that they were trying to do something, but often they'd come against a brick wall. Even in the office in the Environment Agency, they wanted to initiate some kind of recycling scheme in the office, or just take some element of plastic out of the canteen, and they'd always find somebody that would just say, no, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to have my life affected in this way for plastic reduction. And this is something we could tell them is, often it's just the tiniest little change, and just one person just putting their hand up above the parapet and saying, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to be the person that goes to that extent and goes to that effort of implementing the recycling system, or being that person that washes up the mugs instead of having the very easy disposable mugs. And just doing that little thing, just having one little element, has all of those ripple effects. So every time you do meet that brick wall, if you've just got those little effects and just slowly chipping away, and these things do bleed into people's consciousness. And you will find the most unlikely person turning around to you and saying, you did that recycling scheme, or you did that plastic reduction. I've done this. It does go in. It might take a bit longer for some, but it does go in.
Do you think the element of competition, and the fact that you guys were also publicising that competition, is also a part of it? I mean, I think when people do good, they want to be recognise that they've done good as well. You guys were doing that. I mean, surely that helps spur you on.
Certainly.
Yeah, and I think it's like a real diet.
Yeah.
We said, if you want to stick to a diet, you have to kind of shout about it because you need people to take you to account, keep you going. Like otherwise, it's easy to say, "Oh well, I won't bother actually," because no one knows that I'm doing it, so I can just forget about it now. So that was a real driver for us, was to say, if we tell people about it, they're not going to let us. We're not going to be able to let up. So it was a real motivation rather, and also it was a bit fun. We just thought
it was an awful lot of fun.
We did honestly. 2 years ago when we talked about it, I remember saying to Teresa, all right, I'll do it, but I don't really want any photos of myself on social media.
At this point I'm thinking, yeah, whatever, Mary.
I just thought it was a little fun thing, and I thought, you know what, I'll go along with it because it'll probably be really easy and it'll keep her quiet for a little while. 2 years on and she's got me on videos and all sorts of stuff, but it makes you realise that people want to hear it, they want to engage, and it just, like Teresa says, it just takes someone to say, yeah, we are doing it, and it makes other people feel incentivised and say, I've got other people doing the same thing, I've got partners, and you just don't feel alone in it, and it can sometimes feel like that.
One of the things that people ask us a lot of the time was it easy to do because we had each other, and it absolutely was. And one of the things that we do say to people who are trying to embark on something like this is get an eco buddy. Get somebody that you can bounce ideas off. Get somebody that you can chat about, your eco fails, because everybody fails sometimes. Get somebody that you can phone up and say, guess what, I've done this or I've managed this. Somebody that can really champion you, somebody that you can celebrate with. And that, you don't have to be sisters for that. You can have your best mate, you can have your parents, you can have, next door neighbour. Getting that eco buddy really does spur you on.
I suppose that makes all the difference as well, the accountability side of things.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to know how many people in this room have tried something similar to what Sisters Against Plastic have done. We've got a handful of people. Okay, flip this. How many people are now considering doing something that Sisters Against Plastic have done?
Yay!
Okay, that's really good.
Love it.
So all of you who just put your hands up are going to go and do your plastic audits in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, we want your results. You've got to come and tell us every month. We're going to hold you accountable. No, not really. But please tell us. We love hearing these stories. We love hearing that people are doing something like this. And we will absolutely champion you if you do it. And if you come across some fails, we'll help you out. If you come across some wins, we'll celebrate with you. It's all about everybody coming together and everybody doing something. And I love that loads of people are thinking of doing it now.
No, that's really nice. Look, I've talked to you enough. I'm going to kind of open this out now to the floor and see if you guys have actually got any questions for Sisters Against Plastic. So just it's very straightforward, hands up, and just introduce yourself and with your question. Anyone at all? Yes.
Hello, I'm Chris Rushbrook, Northern Bear. As you all do. I've got 2 kids. Plastic is inherent and everywhere in my life. What first 2 or 3 steps would you say are the best things to take with kids? They're 1 and 2. One's in nappies, one's not in nappies. I'm not doing disposable, reusable nappies. That's my only no. What sort of stuff could you suggest that we cut out first?
So one thing that I absolutely love, and I think are brilliant for kids, and even when you get older, are cheeky wipes.
Yeah.
So
Panda.
there's a number of different brands.
Right.
I use cheeky wipes, but cheeky Panda. So eliminate wet wipes. I think we probably all saw the wet wipe mountain. Just reusable cloth, really easy, and I've not looked back. So that's really easy, specific for kids.
Yeah.
Other things for kids.
Kids like treats.
Yeah,
and we all like to treat our kids, and we had, without realising, got into a habit of every Friday my husband would come home from work, or I would come home from work, and one of us had a little treat for the kids, and inevitably it would be plastic wrapped, whether it was sweets or a little toy or something, and there'd be something. And that was one of the first things that had to not go, but change. Mm-hmm. And actually, once you think about the packaging and the plastic for your treats for your kids, there are other options. There's absolutely other options. My kids, if you got them up here, would be able to list all of the sweets and chocolate bars that they could have that were wrapped in paper and foil. They know them all off by heart.
Yeah.
And there are options for those treats. all kids love that Haribo. All of them do. And it's really important not to make them feel guilty. You can't achieve all of this with guilt, and you can't ostracise them. So the last thing we ever wanted was for our kids to go to a party and say, "Oh, I'm not allowed that. Mum will tell me off."
Yeah.
He's 6 years old.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nightmare when he gets to a
Oh, no,
teenage
yeah,
year,
I know.
when he's seeing one of those arguments. What about this? Damn it, he's done it again.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So again, like, you know, I suppose being the matriarchs of your family as well and leading with this sort of inspirational journey, this plastic diet, your kids must, you know, I like to think that probably the younger generation are even better educated than my generation was, and I grew up with the idea that, you know, refuse, reuse, recycle was the mantra that you lived by.
Yeah.
There must have been a different level. Like, do you see them, I don't really know, do you see them kind of challenging some of their peers over their behaviours now as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My eldest is 13, and she, for her own name, calls herself an eco-warrior. And she is unbelievably proud of all the stuff that we've achieved. And she loves doing, you know, she loves researching and she loves finding out about all of this. The flip side is, because she does talk about it at school, I mean, she came home in tears a few weeks ago because one of her friends had got fed up with her and called her an eco geek.
It could be worse.
And it could be worse. But it was quite a moment. You've got to strike a really decent balance with kids. And that's why I said with the treats, it's not about refusing and taking something away from them. It's about teaching them, actually, there are other options, you know, and you can consider what's going on. And the kids really do get it. We've gone into lots of schools and uniform groups, and it's quite amazing to see 10-year-olds sit and think, how can I reduce plastic in their own little 10-year-old lives? You know, what can they personally do? And they always come up with these ideas. Some of them are completely wild, but some of them are just like, yeah, we could do this or we could do that. And they're thinking about how they can, you know, reduce plastic in their own canteen at school or in their classroom and things like this. And kids get it. Kids really understand and they really want to do something. And we're really keen to. It's been lovely to be able to see all of that reaction from kids.
And what I was saying, you guys also went around and picked up cigarette butts from
Yeah.
around the local community.
Yeah, we weren't specifically cigarette butts, but that's ended up, we've done a couple of litter picks last year as part of the Great British Spring Clean, so we organised some there. And
I thought the metrics were great. That was 3 hours of work in one village, and that was
338 cigarette butts picked up by children in 3 hours.
If there are any smokers in here, sort it out.
It was absolutely phenomenal. But I tell you what, that's something that the kids liked. I mean, I put out a message to my friends, I'm taking my kids on a litter pick. And a few of them went, oh yeah, you know, I took my great summer holiday.
Some are calling child services, of course, yeah.
But we made it into a game.
Yeah.
So we always have, every time we go on a litter pick, we have a competition. Who can find the weirdest thing? And I tell you, you can find some weird stuff when you're out on a litter pick. It's quite phenomenal. I think some of our favourites have been an arm off a Barbie, half a lacy bra. Yeah, how you would lose half is beyond me.
Is it the 6-year-old? How do you know?
We also had, and on that particular one, we had a competition. Guess how many cigarette butts we picked up? Of course, they're all wearing gloves. Nobody does need to call child services. And so, you know, we did have this competition. Nobody guessed 338. Nobody guessed anywhere near that. But we did. We made this into a competition, and the kids, they love it.
I think it's really inspirational. Look, I'm serious here. At least one person in this room has to go and do their plastic audit and has to keep these girls updated with actually how they get on, because I know I'm going to do it. I just need at least one more eco buddy in this room to help me do it as well. I know for you, I could always count on you, can't I? Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mary,
Thank you.
Teresa. Thank you very much. This is Against Plastic.
Thank you.
Okay then, we'll get started with the second half then. It's great to see that all of you have made more friends than as it started out. Nobody's looking at their phone, it looks great. Before I welcome on our second guest, I just wanted to take another bit of sustainability news from the last month. The Potsdam Institute for Research published their findings from a Nobel Prize winning economist who's calculated essentially the cost of us reaching the 2-degree threshold. Everybody knows what that actually means, I'm assuming, in this room. It's when we reach that, it's kind of the point where irreversible damage is done to the planet. They have worked out that it is in fact cheaper for us to act now than for us to wait to get to that point and then starting to deal with that. So obviously time is of the essence because we're not doing enough at the moment to really do anything about that. And so we are relying on people to kick up a bit of a fuss, raise awareness of the issues and try and encourage governments and political leaders around the world to actually start acting now rather than leaving their targets for the next 10 to 20 years. Now, when I was growing up, Greenpeace was probably the biggest organisation I'd ever heard of, whether that was them saving the whales or chaining themselves to oil rigs. And these days, there's a slightly new bunch of kids on the block, quite literally. You will have heard of Extinction Rebellion. You would have seen their actions over the last 12 months in particular that have gained a lot of press coverage. Tonight we're going to hear from 2 of their members and find out exactly what it's like to be in amongst it, what they're getting up to and what they see the future of Extinction Rebellion to be. So, without further ado, I'd love to welcome Veryl Rodriguez and Lucy Randall. Hi, you guys.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Yeah, not bad.
Fantastic. Lucy has made it all the way from her new job that she started this week, so congratulations, Lucy, and thank you very much for making it here. Before we dive into Extinction Rebellion straight away, I think I want to understand a little bit more about you two, because we know enough as it is really about the organisation itself. I want to know the people that go into it, because I'm not a member of it. So what were you doing 24 months ago, before you joined Extinction Rebellion?
So 24 months ago, I think I would have just finished my Masters in Renewable Energy, and I would have probably been searching for a grad job at that time. And then since then, I have had 2 grad jobs, currently working as a graduate sustainability consultant in the construction sector.
Okay, so sustainability very much within your DNA from an academic level as well. What got you at least introduced to Extinction Rebellion?
So I think since university I've become more aware about the climate crisis, and I asked myself, why isn't anyone doing anything about it? So that's why I went ahead and I did my Masters in Renewable Energy, hoping that I would have or come up with solutions for the climate crisis.
Did you?
No, unfortunately not. So, and since then I've been campaigning, I've been signing petitions, I've campaigned with Greenpeace as well, like you mentioned before. We campaign against plastics outside of supermarkets to try and get supermarkets to reduce plastics. But the impact that we were making we were making some sort of impact, but it wasn't as big as we needed it to be. And I was on Facebook and everything, I kept on seeing posts about the climate emergency, what impact we were having, how the devastating events that was happening around the world. And so I started to become more and more anxious about that something needs to be done. And then I came across Extinction Rebellion, and I saw this group that were making a lot of noise, and they were trying to get everyone to sort of start to think about the climate emergency and try to raise the alarm that we need to do something about it as soon as possible. Okay. Yeah. And so I joined in August 2019, last year.
Nice, just in time for the protest, which we'll get onto in just a moment. So Lucy just stepped into the world of work and graduated recently as well. Mm-hmm. What drew you into Extinction Rebellion? Because I'm right in saying you've joined later than Veryl did.
I think it was very much less definite. Like I kind of eased myself into it gently. Like I was at the April Rebellion, but not specifically affiliated with Extinction Rebellion. Like what drove me to it was more of just a need to do something in any way. And so I heard about the protest and I thought, well, I need to be there. And then from there, I decided that I wanted to be a more active part of Extinction Rebellion because it's a way to do something instead of just hearing about it and worrying about it.
Oh, that's interesting. So you actually got to see it from the outside looking in before then wanting to be a part of it. Where were you in April then, watching the protest? Obviously they're down in London. Talk me through that scenario. You watched them from afar?
Well, I went with my partner, and so it was just the 2 of us. But like when we were there, we met like a lot of really interesting people and stuff like that. And like even though I went with just one person, we were made to feel very welcome. And it was really interesting, like the community spaces that were derived from like just these random streets in London, which were normally so cold. And like as soon as Extinction Rebellion was there, it just blossomed into this place of like community and warmth. And that was one of the things that really drew me into the organisation, just like the way people can create this place of like growth and like care for the environment in a place that's normally really not oriented towards that in any way.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I'd say London is a pretty horrible place.
Yeah, not to like bash London, but
no.
You know, when you go to Westminster, the first thing you think isn't like, oh wow, these guys are tree huggers.
It was also like it's usually filled with pollution, but it was during the April rebellion they showed that pollution levels like plummeted.
Yeah.
Because we blocked the roads and everything.
Yeah.
So
you were doing some good then. Yeah. Okay, no, that's fair. That's fair. So you then got involved around August. And then obviously you kind of eased yourself into this. So did both of you take part in the protest that took place in October on a much larger scale, or at least the press made it seem like it was on a much larger scale. What was your involvement within that?
So I just went so it was the first time that I went for the rebellion, and I just told myself I'm just going to go there and just talk to random people and just see how I can get involved, maybe just be a supporter rather than actually take an active role. There's different roles you can take on, like for example you can be action well-being, or you can volunteer to sort of like cook at the kitchen, or any like different other roles. You can also sort of like choose to get arrested, but you don't have to get arrested. So I just went and supported all of the actions mainly. Just took part in the actions, took part in the marches and stuff like that. And I was there for 4 days and got involved. So it was the first day that I went. I didn't know what I was going to do. It was in St. James's Park, and I had my tent with me. And I could remember that everyone was moving to St. James's Park because all of the other tents were being sort of battered by the police because they were trying to get people off the roads. And everyone was going to the St. James's Park not knowing what's going to happen. So I pitched my tent for the first night. And then the second day, I remember just sort of like going around Trafalgar Square. There was a lot happening at that time. There was music, there were people speaking on the phone, loads of speeches were being given. I remember just randomly being part of a samba band. I've never done anything like that before, and I was just drumming over there, which is amazing. And then I came back to St. James's Park and my tent was being dragged away by the police. And I remember just sort of being so stressed. But I feel like that was really, that taught me a lot, because even though I was there with my tent sort of being dragged away, explaining to police, oh, that's my tent, can I have it back, please? Everyone was like very calm, and there was a huge community feel, and everyone was just shouting out words of like hope, saying it's going to be okay. We have ourselves at the end of the day. And we're still sort of like going to go through this. And even though there was a lot of like negative stuff happening, there was also a lot of positive stuff. And that community feel is what I took away from that event. Yeah.
That's really nice. Yeah. How long were you down for the protest then, Lucy?
I went for 4 days in the first week and then 3 days in the second week.
And what was your involvement while you were down there?
So I went with Extinction Rebellion Birmingham, and then like with my affinity group, which for those that don't know is just like a small group that you set up that like you do your actions with. So I was doing bits of like outreach, bits of swarming, which is when you block the roads, and then like periodically, like in such a way that it's just within like legal limits. I did get arrested, which was quite a big part of my experience there. And yeah, just kind of bits and bobs.
You'll have to talk me through the arrest, because I think everybody else did. Like, go on. What happened? What were you doing?
Well, I think my arrest was pretty representative of most people's. Like, it was very normal. Like, I was sitting on the road. I was very low-key angry at, like, the establishment. And they said, move. And I was like, no. And they were like, if you don't move, we're going to arrest you. And I was like... They had, 3 people carry me away, and it all looked very dramatic. And then when we got nearer the police van, they were like, right, can you just walk now? And I was like, okay. I'm not, I don't really gain anything by like...
We've got away from the cameras now, yeah.
Yeah, I was
course,
like,
yeah.
it just felt rude.
So hang on, which day did that happen on?
That was on the Tuesday afternoon, so the second day of the protest.
Okay, so they kind of, I'm not going to say let you off, but they kind of what happens after that? You say that they let you walk. Do they just say, can you please now
No, I
stop
had
making a
to get
nuisance
in the
of yourself?
van and they took me to West End Central, and there were a few other protesters there, it was nice to get to know them. A few people were like chatting to the policeman. My policeman was not particularly friendly, but other people's were, so that was nice. And then they take your fingerprints and everything like that, and then you do get put in a cell. I was in there for like 11 hours. The funny thing actually is that while I was in the cell, I asked for a book to read, and they gave me a book where the protagonist for the entire length of the novel is trapped in a room.
Nice.
I was like, are you kidding me? It was.
So you wanted a little bit of escapism in the
Yeah.
book form at the very least, and you didn't get that.
Yeah, well, I wanted the escape more than anything.
You wanted more escape, of course. Yeah. So what you then get out and you just think, because some people might have been deterred by that and gone, I'm going to go home because that was a horrible experience. Why did you go back?
I went back to my tent, which was on the road.
It was still there. Luckily.
Yeah, it was still there. But it was that like a few of like the other Extinction Rebellion members like met me outside the station, and that was nice. They walked me back. Like there's a lot of effort into making sure that like the arrestees are kept safe. Like there's an entire arrestee support system, so no one has to be on their own. No one has to like be alone when they exit the station. And then I just carried on for a bit. Then after a couple of days, I had to go back to work.
So you guys have kind of touched upon the structure that exists within Extinction Rebellion. So you kind of talked about, obviously there's Extinction Rebellion Birmingham, and then you have your affinity groups, yes, or not infinity groups, sounds cooler, but affinity groups, of which then you're kind of carrying out those actions. Can you just give me a little bit more of an overview as to how Extinction Rebellion is structured? Because what makes the organisation in theory so unique is its apparently flat structure. This is an entirely democratic organisation. There isn't a hierarchy. So that sounds like, it is literally organised chaos from the outside. Tell me a little bit about how it actually works on the inside.
So yeah, we are a grassroots movement, and we do operate using a self-organising structure. So we have, do you want to speak about the affinity groups and the working groups a bit?
Yeah, for sure. So the affinity groups are really more about what you do your actions with and stuff like that, and just to make sure that you have a group within Extinction Rebellion so that you don't feel like lost amid the mass of people. And then you have the working groups, which are things like outreach and training. There's like a mass mobilization working group, like specific goals that like very active members will like make sure that they reach. You don't have to be in an affinity group, and you don't have to be in a working group. Like everybody's welcome to take part in actions or give as much or as little as they want. But that's kind of like on the base level. Those are how people are organised. And then there's the regional.
Yeah, then we've got regional, and we've got also central, which is in London, and we all sort of like have coordinators, and that's how we organise ourselves. Basically, we share the information between ourselves. So it's basically the affinity groups, which are sort of we have members of about 12 people, you'd say, who sort of do actions together, and we get to know each other really well, and that's how we go sort of out and do actions together. And the reason we have that is so that we can look after ourselves as well. And I want to speak about Extinction Rebellion's regenerative culture, which is a huge part of us. I think the regenerative culture is the glue that keeps us together, because actions and protesting can be really stressful, and it can have a huge toll on mental health as well. But having a regenerative culture within us is what keeps us going, and it's what keeps. Some people say that actions only last for maybe a few hours or maybe a day, but the regenerative culture lasts forever. It will just stay with you, because we practice reflection. We listen to each other about what other people feel. We don't shy away from emotions. We welcome emotions such as grief, anger. If you want to cry, you can cry. And ultimately, we just need to tell the truth about how we're feeling about the climate emergency. And I think when you do come out like that, when you have people around you who are there to support you, you feel a lot better. So I think that's really crucial, because if we didn't have a regenerative culture, we would just stress ourselves out and we wouldn't be able to continue any further. And I think that's what keeps us different from other activist movements as well.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I don't mean to be too blunt, but continue to do what? I mean, what do you see? Sort of, maybe this is a personal thing for each of you, the reasons why you got involved in Extinction Rebellion, but what end do you see Extinction Rebellion achieving? What is the common goal that all of you are working towards at the moment?
So I think at the minute we have made a bit of progress. Like we got the government to declare a climate and ecological emergency, but it's not enough. And there's a lot more we need to do. We need to educate more people about what's happening around the world, about the climate emergency, and we need to sort of like raise that awareness. We need to sort of bring the climate crisis on people's agenda, because I feel like if people knew about what's happening around the world today, they would definitely take action, but that's not the case. And I think that's one of the reasons we're in this mess in the first place. So we've got a lot of work to do to raise awareness.
Citizens Assembly.
Yeah, so XR's got 3 demands. First one is tell the truth and act as if the truth was real. The second one was achieve net zero by 2025, and the third one is a citizens assembly. Yeah. Do you want to speak about the citizens assembly a bit?
Yeah, you're gonna have to tell me what that is, other than the word.
Well, I only learned about it really when I first joined XR, so that might be a bit rusty. But it's basically like there'll be a cross section of the general population taken, and it'll be that cross section like organised to make the decisions about how the government addresses the climate crisis. So instead of people who are already in power, who have shown themselves to not necessarily have the right priorities in mind, making the decisions about how we address the climate crisis, it'll instead be a representative group of the general population.
And so ideally then you've got people who are going to be impacted not just by climate change, but also the changes that we need to make in order to address climate change as well. Okay, well, the group has got, and we spoke about this already, a bit of a PR problem by and large. Now, I'll try and deal with it as delicately as I possibly can, and maybe when we open up to questions, you guys can just have at them. Extinction Rebellion has kind of been seen sometimes as incredibly disruptive. Those that listen to LBC, Nick Ferrari has his campaign basically against Extinction Rebellion, is Enough is Enough campaign, which is essentially stop bringing London to a halt, because that's not helping solve the climate crisis. When we look at basic figures, it would cost the Met Police an estimated 16 million in April to police the protests, a further 21 million in October to police those protests. And they did make a point that in 2019, that was a total £15 million more that they were given than they have been accredited for dealing with violent crime in the Greater London area, which, as far as some people are concerned, probably sits as more as a priority. I mean, those figures are there to kind of say this is how much these protests are costing us at the moment. Is this a price worth paying? And I know I'm speaking to the converted, but why is this a price worth paying?
I think if we don't do something about the climate emergency, I think the price to pay later on will be a lot more than what the price we're paying now. A lot of people around the world are already affected by this. A lot of people are losing their lives because of the climate emergency. So I think it's worth doing something about now. Doing something about it now, and rather than looking at that as a negative thing, I think we should look at it as something that's actually needed, something that's needed to raise the alarm. I think we do have a bit of a PR problem, but I think that comes with the decentralized grassroots nature that we have, because we don't have a hierarchy. It is just individuals. You want to speak about how it's usually just individuals within XR?
I was going to say, we had like the people gluing themselves to trains, for example, and that seems to be something that's even denounced by the majority of people within Extinction Rebellion.
The problem with how Extinction Rebellion is portrayed is that, like, if you have one person in the general society who does a bad thing, people don't assume that that's representative of the entire population. But the way that the media likes to spin things is that one bad apple in Extinction Rebellion, not saying that these people are bad apples, but if that's how people see them, then the media likes to act as if that is representative of every single other person in Extinction Rebellion, as if we're not all individuals who have our own perspectives and goals. I think that growth is the solution to that. If everybody says, oh, I have a co-worker, a neighbour, someone who's been involved with Extinction Rebellion, then we won't be demonised anymore. It will be normal.
I was going to say, it was the beginning of last year that we had a report go out to, they said it only went to one police commission, but it actually went out to the Home Office and the Met Police, which recommended that Extinction Rebellion be treated as an extremist group. And that put you alongside the likes of ISIS. I mean, that wasn't like they're a bit naughty. That was, we see these people as a security threat. How much of a role do you think the media plays in portraying you guys in such a bad light?
Oh, they're just having a field day with it. They love it. It's just like, if they can make people look bad, then they'll do that. It's what sensationalist media has always done, and it's hardly a surprise that they're doing it for Extinction Rebellion as well.
I mean, it is worth me mentioning, because I quoted those figures to you. So 37 million was spent by the Met Police, which roughly equated to about 21,000 officers' time over the course of the year. However, if we put into perspective that the government spends 10.5 billion a year subsidising fossil fuel companies, and that's from the European Commission from January, then you actually get to kind of see actually where that money goes, and 37 million is a lot of money. I would love it if anyone's got even a spare million would be great, but it's not 10.5 billion.
No.
I mean, you're fighting against a significant change. Do you think that Extinction Rebellion in its current form is capable of realising what it wants to achieve?
I think that the beauty of it is that as it grows, it changes. Everyone who's active in Extinction Rebellion is always thinking of better ways to achieve the goals. So even if we wanted to keep doing exactly what we were doing, we wouldn't be able to, because people would be like, this is pointless. If we didn't see real change, then we wouldn't be doing it. So people are going to keep thinking of more imaginative and creative ways to find change. It's very dynamic and fluid.
I think it's important to point out as well that XR has only been here for about 1.5 years. And within that 1.5 years, we've actually done so much. And we are constantly learning. We have made mistakes in the past, but we have learned from those mistakes. And we're always keen to hear what other people have to say about XR as well, and we do take on all the feedback. And I think because of the nature of XR, and it's one of the reasons why I joined, because I see XR as a good platform where you can introduce, or you can use it to make change, introduce change into society. You can join XR and make it what you want it to be. So I think that's important point out. Yeah. Well.
So I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I want to open it out to some of the floor here, because I know that there are some members of Extinction Rebellion here. For one. But I'd be interested to know as well who would actually consider joining the organisation as well. Okay, that's nice. Yes, of course, yes.
Yeah. So I'm Jez from Anarchist Group Front. As an anarchist, I would suggest that the root cause of climate change is capitalism itself. And meaning you might be measuring your plastic, recycling, and so on and so on. All you're going to do is cause capitalism to revert to making metal straws. If you don't use plastic straws, they use metal straws. If you don't use plastic cups, they use metal cups. The problem is that you're still backing against capitalism. Is that not the case?
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people personally who are all for system overhaul, but we don't have enough time to completely overturn the entire basis of society. So if we can work with what we've got to meet the goals before it's too late, then I think that's a reasonable aim.
Well, I think this is why sustainability has become such a hot topic. I think I also acknowledge that there's only so much that you can change in the time that's required. Capitalism in its current form is not sustainable. That's the fact, and that's why sustainability is the discipline that has to be brought forward. I mean, that's why you guys exist. This is why Sisters Against Plastic do what they do, not necessarily changing the system entirely, but using the systems that currently exist to become more sustainable. And I think that's. We'll go to the back if you've got a question.
Yeah, I just want to say a few things actually. So, firstly, in terms of anarchy, I'm a bit of an anarchist myself. I'm part of Extinction Rebellion. What we're actually doing with our regenerative culture and the future of XR is to actually replace the system. So, for example, the citizens' assemblies, it's decentralising power and meaning that people actually have a voice. So that's an example of how we can literally replace the system. Like currently the government are doing this, like, oh, we're doing our citizens assembly thing, but it's not anywhere near like the kind of stuff that we're doing. They're just kind of using it as a catchphrase and kind of doing their version of it. So that's one example. Yeah, so in terms of like the narrative and like, oh yeah, we're like bad and we're terrorists and like ridiculous stuff like this from a government who are literally like arming terrorists, they're arming ISIS, you know, in not a very like covert way. That's obviously bullshit, and like the media spin of that is also like there's vested interests. Like the people who own the media have like a massive vested interest in fossil fuels and war and like everything that XR is not about, you know. So yeah, and like obviously our main means is non-violent direct action. That's all we're about, non-violent direct action. Like there's nothing violent about what we do, so how that could be classed as extremism, I'm really not sure, you know. We're using creative means, we're trying to engage with people in a positive way and create something really positive. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I'm a part of it. I've been there for both of the kind of international demonstrations, and I've not been arrested. It's really easy not to get arrested. Even
Yeah,
in that
Lucy.
situation.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's easy not to if you don't want to be, you know. Even though I have engaged in arrestable actions, I've engaged in ones that I can get away with if I do it.
You're just a really fast runner.
This is what I mean. It's like if you're a fast runner, then join XR. Because if you believe in this, you know, you've got nothing to lose. It's so easy not to get arrested because once you learn about your rights and exercise them, I mean, we offer free non-violent direct action training. Even if you don't care about XR or like this, what we're doing, and you've got your own things that you're passionate about, come and do our free non-violent direct action training and just learn about your rights and how you could exercise them in this situation. Whether you're protesting about, I don't know, women's rights or refugees or whatever else you're passionate about, it's free, you know.
Do you want to actually tell us how we might get involved in that? Because I'll take a punt.
Well, yeah, there's flyers around, and we've got a bunch here which we can hand out afterwards. I mean, come and speak to us. There's loads of local groups around Birmingham. And
Green and Black Cross are a group of independent solicitors who will do legal training.
Oh, interesting.
And they support legal observers as well at demonstrations.
So that was the Green and Black Cross.
Yes.
Okay. And we have a question as well at the back.
I think, well, so I went to a dinner party with a few of my university friends, and I was kind of, obviously Extinction Rebellion came up, because a lot of them live in London. And it started off on quite a negative spin. I'm more of a I'm a supporter. However, there was a lot of challenges. A lot of my friends work in the medical kind of environment, they're doctors, physiotherapists, nurses, and a few arguments why they were disruptive was obviously ambulances couldn't get to places, and there was one individual who was a young boy who didn't get medical help when they needed to, unfortunately lost his life. And they were saying that they were demonising Extinction Rebellion, which I disagreed with, because when I went to the protest there was something on the wall that really hit home to me, and it was the quote, you probably all know it, being angry at Extinction Rebellion is like being angry at the fire alarm waking you up in the middle of the night. And I thought that was a really beautiful quote to what Extinction Rebellion was about. But so I did argue the case. I said, yeah, we all don't want that little boy to die, but unfortunately looking at the bigger picture and what's happening in a lot of countries, and what's probably more publicised at the moment is Australia, what happened in Australia recently. And I think it's very important to realise that there's small things that happen now. Obviously, you can't really compare to the bigger picture of what's yet to happen. However, in saying that, I've heard a few rumours about how Extinction Rebellion can go, and evolving planes, and you know we're getting into kind of ISIS territory, and that's where I'm really interested. I would love to join Extinction Rebellion, but I do feel like in a way there does have to be some kind of structure and leadership in kind of bringing people together, and we're always going to get the few that take it a little bit too far and do get a bit dangerous with it, and I do appreciate like obviously causing havoc as well with the boy that couldn't get care. Everybody talks about it. Extinction Rebellion has been on everybody's lips. I was at a dinner party and it wasn't going to come up, and then we had a good 2-hour discussion about it. And eventually, you know, they kind of saw my kind of point of it, and it got a bit emotional. We had to have a few glasses of wine to get through that. But I do think it's really important. It's a really important message, and like I said, it is the fire alarm that we need, but it can't just go havoc, which is in a lot of danger too.
I think one would argue then that the more people that join with a moderate perspective, because it's a more democratic structure, means the more moderate the group can become as well. You know, if you pardon it, but drown out the lunatics by having a more reasoned base. So I think actually there's more of a reason if you think that, oh no, I don't want it to go that way. Well, there's your reason for joining. We had another question over here. We haven't.
Sorry, can I just come back to that just quickly? It's one of the things that I didn't mention. So firstly, we're fundamentally a non-violent movement.
Yeah.
So in terms of this fear around us, like hijacking and blowing up planes, like that is not something that we are ever going to do or we will ever condone as a movement, because we are non-violent fundamentally. In terms of like ambulances not getting to where they need to go, actually, you know, you mentioned about the air pollution dropped significantly in London. We always let the cyclists and any emergency vehicles through, but one of the problems was the police were sending through ambulances, like dummy ambulances, to actually like throw us off. So that would create this moment of hesitation where we're like, is it the police or is it an actual ambulance? So they're creating like more problems than they actually are solving. And in terms of, we're a non-violent movement, so we're not actually doing anything bad. We don't need to be policed by any police. Whereas they're still flying helicopters over us at night time, over our camps really low, to like wake us all up, using these like subversive tactics. And for them to keep that helicopter in the air is costing thousands a minute, which they can rack up their totals and say, oh, this is how much Extinction Rebellion cost us. Isn't it such a tragedy? Whereas we didn't actually need them to spend that much at all. And we are fundamentally non-violent. Like, do not forget that. No matter what their spin is, we are fundamentally non-violent. And we could have avoided that situation if the police acted like honestly and like supported us, as opposed to using these weird tactics.
Thank you.
I think also the reason XR is here is to save humanity from extinction, to save humanity from climate change. And so branding us as extremists in line with ISIS is just completely on the opposite end of it. We're here to save humanity, not kill humanity. So I think, that's important to know.
It's an extremist thing though, because we're so used to following the man. Right?
Yeah, I think introducing
saving our planet.
Introducing that change that we need so fast, because change does come with time, but we don't really have time. I think that's the problem. We've probably the UN says we have about 10 years to change the way we live at the minute, to radically change the way we live in order to limit our temperature increase to 1.5 degree. How are we going to get that radical change, and how are we going to change the way we live at the minute? And that's the difficult thing, yeah. And that's the thing that's shocking people as well.
One thing I can't help thinking is that if you're expecting sort of radical change, don't you think that it's all too easy for politicians to ignore you?
I suppose actually the strength of Extinction Rebellion is your visibility, and it's not so much actually about politicians ignoring you, it's actually the public seeing you, because it's the public that should, in theory, if the government works, be influencing politics going forward. I think it's a fair point, but in theory, if we do have representative democracy, which I still believe we do have to an extent, then yes, I suppose what you guys are doing is raising the value. I'm going to take one more question. I'm sorry, I'm going to take, rather than you, because we've spoken to you. Yes.
Yeah, so I just want to quickly respond to that. I'm part of Extinction Rebellion also, and you said that, are we going to not be ignored? We are not just doing that to do a campaign to raise awareness. We have a strategy, and our strategy is to kind of force our government to respond to our demands. We have tried demonstration, we have tried petition in the past. I've been involved with Greenpeace, which is absolutely a great organization, but the gas emission just increase every year, every single year. So it's not working, and our strategy within AXA is to do mass civil disobedience, is to be millions in the street doing some civil disobedience to cause some economical disruption, yes, but this is the only way that the government is listening to us and is responding to our demands. The government won't respond to a petition, to a big demonstration. The government will respond only to millions of people and causing some real disruption. That's what we want to do. And we want to do that to lead to a democratic system, which are the citizen assembly, which will end up with radical solution to cut our carbon emission. That's all we don't want to be ignored.
Thank you.
So who is going to be part of this citizenship assembly?
So the Citizen Assembly is like a random selection of UK citizens which are selected to represent every part of the population. So you have one person from the working class, you have nurses, you have teachers, you have people with from different ages, like half woman, half men, and those people will meet some scientists and will work with experts to end up with some radical law to cut our carbon emission. And we think that this is the only way to have those laws instead of trusting a government which are all corrupt and who want to be re-elected, so which are not willing to do some unpopular law.
Then the risk of something, I mean, you're basically talking about a referendum.
No.
And just, it's a referendum for a specific amount of people that will be representative?
No, it's not a referendum, it's a group of people who are, for example, during 6 months working about some solution. It's not like a yes or no. It's some people who are discussing about what the solutions are with some experts. So it's not, for me, a referendum is not very democratic. It's just a yes or no without knowing what the solutions are, without knowing the issue. The Citizen Assembly is like a democratic protest which allow discussion, which allow
Could I please suggest that the two of you link up afterwards, because for the sake of democracy, I'd like everyone to have their say. And I would say this as well. Look, whether you love or hate Extinction Rebellion, it is probably actually worth engaging with them in discussion anyway, because actually if you do believe that they have got the right intentions but not necessarily the right actions, then you joining the organisation means that you've got a much greater say in how they act going forward. I just want to bring this evening to a close so that I think you guys can go and fight outside. It's John Bright Street, everybody else does. I want to thank our guests for this evening. We'll start with Vera and Lucy from Extinction Rebellion. Thank you so much for joining us. And if we can also thank Mary and Teresa again from Sisters Against Plastic as well. Thank you so much, ladies. We'll be back again in 6 weeks, so that one's going to be more around more business focus, and actually how businesses and employees can become more sustainable. And I just want to close as well. I say Greta Thunberg was on UK soil last Friday, and she had an incredible speech and a great reception, and just one of the things that really stood out, and I think it's relevant for what you guys are here for. So we'll say goodbye with Greta Thunberg, who said, "We will not be silenced because we are the change, and the change is coming whether you like it or not." We've been Ecological. Thank you very much.